Good evening, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com, live in Mackey Arena, following Purdue's 82-49 win over Florida A&M, in which the Boilermakers clinched the 2022 Tallahassee Cup, beating the Rattlers a few weeks after winning at Florida State. The trophies being brought in here right now. It's a big pewter bucket full of, looks like crab legs from Publix. That's what I got. That's the best I can do here. Now, you have to understand, it's Florida A&M. It's December 29th. It's a 5 o'clock game. I have to start these videos somehow. And regardless of how horrible the jokes are, terrible, just awful, they're for me. They're to keep me entertained. They're to keep my creative juices flowing when I might otherwise have no creative juices. Anyway, this is your wrap video once again following Purdue's 82-49 win over Florida A&M. It is brought to you by our friends at the Purdue Club Hotel. Thank you so much to the Purdue Club Hotel, and my apologies if you're disgusted by being associated with the sort of content I'm creating here at the moment. But okay, Purdue wins 82-49 over Florida A&M, a game there's really very little to talk about, a game that does nothing for anyone. Fans don't want these games. Purdue doesn't want these games. TV doesn't want these games. This sets me up for my annual rant about how, in the sake of fairness and equity, the NCAA, in its NCAA tournament selection process, really needs to exempt every team's 3 worst net rankings wins, not their losses, because you need to pay a price if you lose a game like this. But if you take this and New Orleans off Purdue's resume, and if you do the same for Arizona, and you do the same for Michigan, and you do the same for Virginia, and you do the same for Indiana, and you do the same for Oklahoma, it's all even. And what you're doing here is you're not disincentivizing, Purdue and all those other teams from scheduling these games. If you're serious about the NCAA being a 1 through 358, or however many Division I teams there are, you need these games to make the economics work. Florida A&M needs these games to field an athletic department. Now, Florida A&M, if you look at their schedule, they've gotten the games they need to make the bottom line work. But symbolically, by hurting Purdue and hurting Indiana and hurting Illinois and hurting UCLA, punishing them for playing these games, that's just not right. And it seems like a really easy fix to make. And even if it's just symbolic, we all know how much the NCAA loves cheap, empty, symbolic wins. Here's one for you. This is a really easy one, is don't punish Purdue from playing these games. You have to play these games because you have to fill out your season ticket package. TV wants inventory, even if it's not ideal inventory. But mostly you have to fill out your season ticket package. Everybody's got to play games. Everybody's got to play somebody. You got to fill out your schedule, right? Everybody's going to play a relatively even number of games. These games are going to get played. You shouldn't punish people for playing them, because A&M needs these games, New Orleans needs these games, and it just makes a lot of sense to me. So there we go. I have gotten that out of my system for this year. You've heard this every year for the last, I don't know how many years, so I've said my piece. Purdue goes unbeaten in non-conference play. Just an absolutely amazing non-conference season for Purdue. Purdue has now won 24 straight non-conference games, the NCAA tournament notwithstanding. Just an absolutely remarkable run for Purdue this season. I understand the weight of my words. I'm not overstating things when I say amazing, remarkable, etc. If you're going to argue with either of those words, good luck. If you saw this coming, you're claimed to have seen this coming, you're either a liar, someone's mom, or just the most shameless and egregious of homers, because nobody saw this coming. Nobody saw Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer being this ready, this unflappable, this mature right away. Nobody saw Zach Edey going from, platoon center, a really good one at that, to the best and most consistent player in college basketball by a fairly significant margin. Nobody saw all of this other stuff that's developed occurring in terms of guys moving up into roles they've never played before, occurring as smoothly as it has. It's just been a best-case scenario and then some start for Purdue, as we all know. And, I'm trying to keep to a minimum the comparisons from last year's team to this year's team, to a minimum. I'm not doing very well because their relevance keeps coming into play. The situation has become strikingly similar, amazingly similar. So I have to keep going back to this. I do think that this year's team is ahead of last year's team in terms of Big Ten readiness. This year's team is not as good as last year's team. They're certainly not as talented as last year's team. I don't know if Purdue's the best team in the country right now. They're ranked number one, but you get ranked number one this time of year because you haven't lost, and Purdue hasn't lost. Purdue's got the best player in the country. That certainly helps. Is Purdue better than UConn? Is Purdue better than all these other teams? I have no idea. All I know is they've done everything you could possibly have asked of them and deserve credit for it. But I think last year's team was better than this one. Last year's team had flaws, yes, and that needs to be taken into account. But I do think Purdue had more weaponry last year. They had more talent last year. They also had some real existential issues that were bound to catch up with them that I think this year's team, while it might not have the highest ceiling, as high a ceiling as last year's team, I think this year's team has a much higher floor than last year's team, if that makes sense. And for that reason, I think, last year's team was better suited to non-conference play than it was Big Ten play. I think they were better suited to win shootouts than rock fights. I think this year it's the exact opposite. I think this year's team, as successful as it's been so far, I think they might even be better suited for Big Ten play than non-conference play. And for that, I think as long as Purdue's not going to be shooting very well, I don't think Purdue is as well suited to win shootouts as they are rock fights. I think when you rebound and you draw fouls and you take care of the basketball the way Purdue does, or at least has been to this point, I think that sets you up well for Big Ten play. They're not the best defensive team in college basketball by any stretch, but they're way better than they were last year. They're way better than they've been a couple of years lately. They're doing a good job paying attention. They're doing a good job being on top of details. They're doing a really good job trying really hard, and that's a huge part of Big Ten success. I think Purdue is set up for success here. And when I say that, I don't want that to sound like I'm saying that they haven't been successful thus far. You can't do a whole lot better than 13-0, 11-0 in non-conference play, whatever the record is. I'm not even sure off the top of my head. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But I think there are some things about this team that are compatible with Big Ten success. And I think that's just really, really encouraging if you're a Purdue partisan here. I'm not saying Purdue's going to win the Big Ten. I'm not even declaratively saying at this point they're the best team in the Big Ten. I don't know yet. I don't know who's good in the Big Ten. Every time you think somebody's there, something happens. You think it's Indiana's time, they go to Xavier and they're lucky to win that game. Xavier blows a layup at the end, and then everybody else good Indiana plays the rest of the year, they get handled by. You think Illinois' time might be now, they go to Missouri, they get boat raced. You think it might be Michigan's time maybe, I don't know. They get boat raced by Arizona. They get beat by Virginia on their home floor in a game they probably should have won or easily could have won. You think Maryland's made it. They play UCLA on their home floor and they get destroyed. Michigan State's not as talented, not as good as typical Michigan State teams are. You sleep on Wisconsin and you always pay a price, but look where Wisconsin is right now. I mean, I don't know if they're legitimate. Yeah. Iowa just lost at home to Eastern Illinois. Who's good? I have no idea. Is Ohio State good? I have no idea. I guess we'll find out here in a couple weeks. I have no idea. Purdue has the best resume. Purdue has the best body of work, clearly. But we'll kind of find out over the next 8 weeks or so who's, kind of the Darwinism of Big Ten basketball takes hold. You find out a lot about these teams that maybe non-conference didn't really illustrate. The coaching gets better, the game plans get better, the defense gets better, the effort level gets better, the environments get more daunting. The most difficult stuff for Purdue still lies ahead. But I do think from a formulaic perspective, the way Purdue is winning, I think it does jibe well with, typical formulas for Big Ten success. I think their effort level's been good, and I think they've done everything right to this point, and there's no reason to think they'll stop. I think when you look at this game, there's really not a whole lot worth talking about here. I think, your four men are all doing really positive things. Good problem to have is you got 3 of them, and they're all doing really good things over short periods of time. I think what's important to Purdue's success here moving forward is, I don't think Purdue has a lot of continuity from last season. But I don't know how many people really have continuity, period, in college basketball. So Purdue's lack of continuity is relative. I think everybody's breaking in transfers in bigger roles than Purdue's breaking in freshmen even. And I think what Purdue has more of right now is not continuity, but maybe harmony, because I think the new guys coming in are really ideally wired for this, to be able to handle everything thrown at them right away. But also I think that you have guys in this team that this first half of a season has illustrated the fact that winning is enough for them. They could be really unhappy. I'm looking at these 3 forwards you have, and they're all starter caliber guys, and they're all guys who, if they were playing 30 minutes a game, you could very easily say they have earned that, because they have. I think, Trey Kaufman-Rand on a lot of Big Ten teams would be a double-digit scorer. I think Caleb Furst would be, is going to be an all Big Ten guy. And I think Mason Gillis is kind of the ultimate winner at Purdue. And I think all of those guys are worthy of much more than they're getting. Winning has to be enough for them. And I think to this point, it has been. And I think that's what I'm getting at with harmony. I don't know if a lot of teams are enjoying that sort of luxury. I think, I would be naive to not suggest that there are a lot of teams out there with bad locker rooms. I think there are a lot of teams who know that if you're in locker number 5, the guy in locker number 6 is making more money than you. I think there are a lot of guys who are starting to realize that their coaches probably lied to them a little bit, or at least, lied by omission or stretched the truth a little bit to get them in their uniforms. And I don't think Purdue has any of those problems. And that's that sort of thing behind the scenes you don't really see on game day, but you kind of can probably assume it. You can probably kind of, to a certain extent, know it when you see it. I think Purdue's just got a really good thing going. I think Purdue's got a really good thing going right now, except for the lights being on. I'm just going to finish this up. To hell with it. I'm not going to start over. So look, not a whole lot to say about this game. More so just about Purdue's non-conference season. The hardest is yet to come. For all we know, the best is also yet to come, because one thing Purdue has done this season thus far is really redefine what's possible, and there's no reason to think they're going to stop now. No promises. This could still go a lot of different ways, but there are no red flags around this team or anything like that. So with that said, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to literally and figuratively turn the lights off on this rap video. Thank you once again to the Purdue Union Club Hotel for your support of all this. I would greatly appreciate it very much. And thank you for watching. Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. And thank you for processing our materials, however it is you process our materials. And I will talk to you guys again next year. Get it? 2023. Now, I'll talk to you guys again on January 2nd after Purdue resumes Big Ten play against Rutgers, a game that should not be taken lightly in any way, shape, or form. So, thank you, everybody.